What if I told you there was a disease so deadly that the alleged longest recorded case of survival is only 16 years, and that itself is an outlier with the median survival being only a few months? Diseases so fatal that nobody has ever survived one. Today, we're going to talk about the mysterious and terrifying agents known as prions. Proteinaceous infectious particles, or prions for short, are misfolded versions of prion proteins found in the brain. Proteins fold all the time into three-dimensional shapes, and these shapes allow proteins to take on additionally specific roles in your body. Normal prion proteins, while not understood in their entirety, have been shown to participate in several biological processes, including neuritogenesis, neuronal homeostasis, cell signaling, cell adhesion, and a protective role against stress, according to the National Institutes of Health. In other words, they are very important proteins. However, the deformed versions of these proteins, prions, are able to induce their abnormal folding onto normal prion proteins found in the outer membrane of neurons. While the mechanism behind the induced folding is not fully understood, they replicate through this induced contortion. This leads to a buildup of these prions in neurons, damaging and ultimately destroying them. As more neurons die, holes start to appear in the brain in a sponge-like or spongiform fashion, and that is where prion diseases get their official name: transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. Encephalopathy just refers to a disease of the brain. There are 5 human and 6 animal prion diseases known to date. The prion disease that most people are familiar with is bovine spongiform encephalopathy, also referred to as mad cow disease. BSE is a neurodegenerative disorder in cows that leads to behavioral changes, coordination problems, and eventually death. BSE can fall into 2 categories depending on its source of transmission. It can be spontaneous and occur inside the brain of the affected cow, or it can be transmitted, usually through contaminated feed. Research suggests that the same agent that causes the latter BSE in cows causes variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans. VCJD causes behavioral changes and distorted tactile senses before reaching the same fate as BSE: death. That's the true horror of these diseases. There is no cure. There are medications to deal with some of the symptoms, but that's it. The prognosis always ends in death. We still haven't talked about the most common prion disease in humans, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, as opposed to variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease discussed earlier. Unlike VCJD, 85% of classic CJD cases have no form of transmission, since the abnormal protein folding occurs spontaneously in the affected person. The remaining percentage involves inherited genetic mutations that induce disorders like fatal familial insomnia or Gerstmann-Straussler-Scheinker disease, both of which are extremely rare and only affect a few families around the world. According to the World Health Organization, the disease usually begins with a progressive mental deterioration that soon becomes associated with progressive unsteadiness and clumsiness, visual deterioration, muscle twitching, and a variety of other neurological symptoms and signs. CJD is also rapidly progressive, with the median illness duration being only 4 to 5 months, as opposed to 13 to 14 months for variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. In the later stages of the illness, the patient is usually left mute or immobile. Suffice it to say, prion diseases are terrifying. However, there is some good news. For one, our knowledge of TSEs and how they spread has led to guidelines and practices being implemented to limit potential infection. Medical tools are sterilized, and agricultural companies barred from using brain and spinal cords in products. This is why classic CJD is the most common. It occurs spontaneously. This occurrence is rare, though, with only about 1 case per million. For example, the United States hovers around 350 cases per year, and the median age at death for CJD is 68 years. This also means that prions aren't some incurable airborne illness that should cause panic. Quite the opposite, in fact. Your chances of dying to cancer, a heart disease, and a car crash are all magnitudes higher than the chance of dying to a prion disease. Moreover, these diseases are probably not intrinsically incurable. Rather, it's just the lack of complete knowledge to how prion diseases work and prion proteins themselves that is preventing the development of a cure. So don't stay up late worrying about developing a prion disease. Chances are you won't.